a big announcement from President Trump saying a trade deal with China has finally been reached and the relationship between the two nations is, quote, excellent. Let's go live now to New York and CNN business and politics correspondent Vanessa Yurkevich. Big development here, Vanessa.
Yes, significant development, and coming from the president this morning, confirming that U.S. and Chinese trade officials have worked out a framework. He posted on Truth Social this morning saying the deal is done, indicating that he expects that China is going to continue to increase the flow of rare earth minerals and magnets, and the U.S. is going to continue to include Chinese students in its universities and in its colleges. He did reiterate, though, that the tariff rate was going to stay the same. You see 55% and 10% there. He's saying 55% because he's stacking all of the different tariffs that are on Chinese exports right now. But this was a critical meeting, Pam, because about a month ago, essentially what's laid out in this framework by the president was agreed to in Geneva, but things sort of got off the rails and tensions started to escalate, with China stemming the flow of these key rare earth minerals, making everything from cars to airplanes. And China really controls about 90% or more of the refining capacity of these rare earth minerals that the U.S. critically relies on. And in turn, the U.S. said that it was going to revoke a lot of the Chinese student visas that initially America had agreed to. So essentially, this framework is just really solidifying what was agreed to a month ago. No concessions, though, Pam, on those higher tariff rates that we're still seeing, 30% and upwards on Chinese exports, and that 10% tariff rate on U.S. exports. This is something that obviously businesses were trying to pay attention to, seeing if there would be any breaks on that, but doesn't look like it as of now, the information that we're getting from the president.
Breaking this morning, President Trump is saying on social media that the trade deal with China is complete. In his post, the president writes, "Our deal with China is done, subject to the final approval with President Xi and me," and giving some details of what he thinks and says is going to be in there up front. CNN's Phil Mattingly is tracking this one. I mean, these talks that have been going on, hugely important, but what are you hearing about this, Phil?
Yeah, Kate, here's what matters in terms of what the president announced today, the deal that was kind of hammered out over the course of 20 hours of negotiations over 2 days between the two delegations led by Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent on the U.S. side. What matters is what President Trump was talking about related to opening up the spigot for rare earth minerals. Now, if you're sitting there going, what are rare earth minerals? Why do I care about these things? Here's why you care. They are largely heat-resistant components that are absolutely essential to just about everything that matters in terms of kind of general life operations, technology, phones, flat screens, the power cords for your computers on one side. More critically, and what really posed an acute risk to the U.S. supply chains, U.S. manufacturers, and really global manufacturers around the world, they are critical components in the automotive industry. They are central components to a lot of U.S. and international defense weapons systems. The reason why this became such a significant issue, Kate, is that China has basically a virtual monopoly on the heavy rare earth elements that make up the most sophisticated autos and defense systems. That was a huge problem. Shortly after the April 2nd Liberation Day tariffs President Trump announced, China slapped export controls on the shipment of those elements. Essentially, they locked them up and put them behind closed doors. And when they basically produce and refine roughly 90 to 95% of the entire world's supply, that causes major, major issues. For all the ways, Kate, you've heard, I've heard administration officials talk about how they believe they have a clear kind of they're in a better place than China has ever been when it comes to the bilateral trade war that was going on. This was the one issue where China had absolute leverage. That was the driving force behind these talks. U.S. officials were frustrated. They thought that first round of talks in Geneva unlocked these rare earth minerals, or they kind of reopened the access to supply. They did not. And so what President Trump and his team were willing to put on the table is they are going to remove some U.S. export controls on critical industries. We don't know exactly which ones yet. The president announced in that Truth Social post that the student visa issue that the administration had put on the table, saying they were going to block them, that is now no longer in effect, according to the president. We are waiting to see what else specifically this deal is going to entail, but make no mistake about it, China had a clear leverage point here. they utilized it over the course of the last several weeks, and they're getting something out of this agreement in the form of U.S. export controls coming down, the student visa issue going away. There are no new tariffs as a part of this agreement. But essentially, if you want a big picture of this, Kate, the most important bilateral relationship in the entire world, the two largest economies in the entire world that were essentially at a place of complete trade embargo just a month and a half ago, are now back to where they were 5 or 6 weeks ago in Geneva. That's the baseline. There's no dramatic step forward in the relationship. President Trump, in a follow-up Truth Social post, said that he and Xi will work together, Xi Jinping will work together. But it's basically back to where they were 6 weeks ago, which is better than where they were 2 days ago.
And let's hope better than where they will be in 12 minutes from now. That's exactly right. Phil, it's great to see you. Thank you.